I was still holding the pie when my father told me not to come home again. It was warm pumpkin, her favorite. I'd baked it the night before, using Mom's old recipe, the one with extra nutmeg and just half a teaspoon of maple syrup. She always said that's what made it special. I'd driven 3 hours in fog to bring it, like I did every Thanksgiving. I thought I was home, but we hadn't even said grace. The turkey hadn't been carved. The stuffing still steamed in that crystal dish Mom only brought out once a year. And I was still standing, still smiling, still holding that pie when Dad said, "Give back the $50. Ling, Gletta, or don't bother coming home again." At first, I thought I misheard him. Maybe it was some weird attempt at a joke. Dad wasn't one for theatrics. And Thanksgiving wasn't exactly the time for dramatics, at least not in our family. But nobody laughed. Sophie sat across the table, hands folded in her lap like she was at a funeral. Jake stared at the tablecloth. Even Mom's sweet. Soft-spoken Mom couldn't look at me. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. The pie felt heavier now, like it knew it didn't belong. "Excuse me," I asked, my voice barely audible. Dad's jaw clenched. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "What exactly are you accusing me of?" Sophie looked up. Her eyes were rimmed red, mascara clinging to the edges like she'd been crying for hours. But her voice was crystal clear. "Mom's bank account. $50,000 disappeared last month, right after you helped her set up online banking." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I had helped Mom with her accounts. She'd been so nervous about going paperless. I'd sat with her on a quiet Sunday afternoon, walked her through the app, the security questions, the passwords. She wrote them all down in that old floral notepad she kept in the kitchen drawer. That was 4 weeks ago. And now, they were saying that's when I stole from her. "You really think I took Mom's money?" I whispered. Jake finally spoke, his voice stiff like it hurt to say the words. We didn't want to believe it, but the bank confirmed the withdrawals were made online. No one else had access. No one else, except me. I looked at Mom. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She just lifted her napkin to her mouth, like she might be sick. That was when it hit me. The pie didn't matter. The drive didn't matter. The ritual didn't matter. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was a suspect. I set the pie gently on the edge of the counter. The tin made a soft click against the granite. I grabbed my coat from the chair. I didn't say a word. "You have until the end of the week," Dad said behind me. Quieter this time. "Then we go to the lawyer." I didn't cry on the drive back. No screaming. No cursing. No pounding the steering wheel like they do in movies. I just drove. Coat still half-buttoned. Pie still untouched on the counter behind me. It was Thanksgiving night, and the streets were quiet, lit by porch lights and paper turkeys taped to windows. The whole town smelled like cinnamon and peace. Except me. I checked into the roadside inn just off the highway. I'd passed it 100 times on the way home, but never once stopped. The clerk didn't ask why I needed a room on a holiday. I was grateful for that. The room smelled like old carpet and microwave popcorn. I kicked off my boots and sat on the edge of the bed. I was 35 years old, a senior forensic accountant. I handled multi-million-dollar fraud cases across 4 states, and my own family thought I'd stolen from them. But the truth, the worst part, wasn't the accusation. It was that I wasn't surprised. Not entirely. There had been signs. Quite little moments. The way Sophie rolled her eyes when Mom bragged about my promotion last year. The time Dad asked, Don't you think it's time to settle down? You know, live a little like my career wasn't real life? Or last Christmas, when I offered to pay for the new roof, Jake muttered, "She just wants to buy loyalty." I thought they were teasing. I thought we were still family. But maybe I wasn't part of that we anymore. Maybe I'd never been. I lay back on the stiff motel comforter and stared at the ceiling. I tried to replay every step, every click, every password. That Sunday, 4 weeks ago, when Mom asked for help going paperless, I remember her hands shaking as she opened the app. How she kept saying, "I don't trust the cloud," like it was a storm she could avoid. So I sat beside her, walked her through it. Security questions, two-factor authentication. We even wrote everything down in that old floral notepad. The one that lived in the kitchen drawer next to the scissors and expired coupons. That drawer was never locked. Anyone could have opened it. Sophie still lived at home, off and on, depending on whatever mess she was dealing with. Jake had a spare key. He came and went, like the place still belonged to him. So why did they all look at me like I was the only one who could have done it? Maybe because I was the one who showed Mom how to use the app. Maybe because they thought I was clever enough to cover my tracks. But clever isn't the same as cruel. And I would never steal from her. Still, they believed I did. I pulled out my phone. The screen lit up with a message from Sophie. "We didn't want it to come to this. But you made it hard to trust you." "No, are you okay?" "No, happy Thanksgiving." Just that. As if I owed them an apology. I flipped the phone over. Screen down. At work. I spend my days untangling fraud shell companies. Fake invoices. Identity theft. I know what it looks like when money vanishes. And more importantly, I know what it looks like when someone wants it to look like someone else's fault. If they really wanted to treat me like the criminal in the family, maybe it was time I started investigating like one. I didn't sleep much that night. When I finally closed my eyes, it wasn't from peace, it was from mental exhaustion. But by 6:30 the next morning, I was up. No alarm needed. Years of chasing corporate fraud had trained my instincts well. I poured myself a cup of bitter motel lobby coffee and opened my laptop on the desk. My firm was working on a multi-state case involving elder financial exploitation. Retirees with modest savings accounts that were drained in 3 large withdrawals, each just under the federal reporting threshold. Not just one bank, but one name kept coming up again and again. Greenwell Mutual. My mother's bank. I hadn't told my family that I was part of the investigation. I wasn't allowed to. But I had clearance to access certain internal records, and I knew exactly who to ask. I fired off a message to Theo, our compliance officer. Just a name, a location, and a date range. Within the hour, he sent me back the data. I stared at the spreadsheet, my heart in my throat. 3 withdrawals. The 10th of October, $20. Oh, 0, the 15th of October, $15. 0, the 20th of October, $15. 0, each withdrawal done in person, not online. I felt my breath catch. That was it. The first crack. The whole accusation was built on the idea that I had used Mom's online banking access, but the money hadn't been moved digitally. It had been withdrawn, face to face. Theo had also sent teller logs and a link to the branch's internal security footage. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the trackpad. Then I clicked. The first video loaded slowly. Greenwell, Mutual. The 10th of October, 2:13 p.m. A young woman walked up to the teller window. Blonde ponytail, gray hoodie, large sunglasses. She kept glancing over her shoulder like she was late or nervous. For a second, I thought maybe it was a stranger. Maybe someone they hired. Maybe someone faking an identity. But then she stepped closer to the camera, pulled down her mask to speak, and I saw her face. Sophie. Even with the grainy resolution, I knew that face. I'd babysat that face, held it when it cried, watched it light up on birthdays, and now I was watching it commit theft. She looked unsure, fidgeting with her fingers as she handed over what appeared to be Mom's ID. She signed something on the counter. Her handwriting hadn't changed since high school. My chest tightened. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some accident. It was planned. They'd used my help the afternoon. I spent walking Mom through online banking as their cover. And then they made me the fall girl. I paused the video and just sat there, staring, not blinking, as if watching longer would make it untrue. But it was her, Sophie, my little sister, the one who used to crawl into my bed when storms scared her, the one I stood up for in middle school when she got bullied for wearing hand-me-downs, the one who cried when I left for college. And now, she was the one who made me the villain in my own family. I didn't cry. Not when I saw Sophie. Not even when I replayed the video a second time. But something inside me shifted, like a floorboard giving way. I clicked open the second video. The 15th of October. Same bank. Different face. Jake. No hoodie. No disguise. Just his usual navy sweater. Relaxed shoulders. Easy confidence. He looked like he belonged there. He smiled at the teller. Made a joke I couldn't hear. Then he handed over a slip. Signed something. And walked away with a cashier's check. Clean. Smooth. Effortless. My chest burned. Jake was the golden boy. The one who never called on birthdays but always showed up for the photos. He didn't even need the money. He just liked being part of things. And this time, things meant framing me. The footage didn't lie. The timestamps matched the withdrawal logs Theo had sent. Jake had walked into the same branch 5 days after Sophie. Not just once. Not a mistake. A pattern. And I was the cover story. The successful daughter. The one who knew her way around systems. The one who wouldn't be suspected until someone made her look guilty. I felt the room press in. A motel wall. A cheap lamp. A coffee cup now cold. I wasn't just hurt. I was furious. Not just because they stole from Mom, but because they made me feel ashamed of something I didn't do. They watched me walk out of that house holding that pie, and they let me. I clicked on the third video. The 20th of October. Same bank. Same teller. Different day. And once again, Sophie. Same gray hoodie. Different sunglasses this time. She looked more relaxed now. Less fidgety. Almost like she'd done this before. Because she handed over what I now knew was Mom's ID. Signed again. Same lazy loop in her S. She didn't even try to hide it. No wig. No scarf. No effort. Just the same slouched posture I remembered from our teenage years. She was comfortable. Confident. Arrogant. That's what got to me the most. The arrogance. As if no one would ever check. As if I would just walk away quietly and carry the guilt. She didn't know me very well anymore. I paused the video. The still image of her leaning over the counter stayed frozen on my screen. I felt nothing. No pity. No heartbreak. Just a slow, rising clarity. They hadn't just stolen from Mom. They had studied the timing, waited until I helped Mom with the online setup, then used that moment to cast doubt. They used my love for her as a smokescreen. A perfect frame-up. Or so they thought. I wasn't done. The videos proved the withdrawals were in person. That should have been enough. But I wanted more. I wanted to know how deep this went. And if they'd been sloppy anywhere else. I pulled up the metadata from Mom's account setup. The first login after I left town, not from Mom's phone. From a tablet? Registered on the home Wi-Fi. Same IP address Sophie used to stream Netflix. Coincidence? No. I traced the recovery email tied to the account. It wasn't the one I helped Mom set up. It was an alternate Gmail. I checked the recovery phone number linked to that Gmail. Jake's number. There it was. Not just fraud. Coordination. Sophie had access to the house and Mom's physical ID. Jake had access to digital infrastructure. They used both, and they timed it for when I was out of town. After I had touched the system, so that when the money vanished, it would point back to me. I leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, heart pounding, not from fear, but from focus. They thought no one would check the logs. They thought no one would see the recovery email. They thought my silence meant shame. It didn't. It meant I was watching. I messaged Theo again. "Can you send me the teller slip scans?" he replied in seconds. I downloaded the PDF, filed it into a presentation folder, the kind I used for courtroom exhibits. If they wanted to treat me like the criminal, I'd show them what it looks like when the criminal keeps receipts. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn them I was coming. I just drove. Monday afternoon. That golden hour between Halloween and Christmas when the sun leans low and everything looks like a memory. The kind of light that used to make this house feel like home. Not today. The driveway was full. Jake's SUV. Sophie's compact. Mom's old sedan. No guests. Just family. I parked at the curb. Let the engine take itself quiet. My hands rested on the folder in my lap. The one that held every receipt. Every timestamp. Every lie they thought would stay buried. Then I stepped out. Walked up the porch. My knuckle didn't knock. I used my old key. The house smelled like chicken broth and rosemary. Familiar. Intimate. A weapon. Now. I heard voices in the kitchen. Silverware clinking. Someone laughed. Not me. I followed the sounds until I saw them. Sophie perched on the counter, swinging her legs like she was 13 again. Jake leaned against the fridge, arms crossed like he always did when he knew something you didn't. Mom stood at the sink, drying dishes with the same towel she'd used since I was in high school. Dad stirred something on the stove. Back turned. They looked up when I entered, and everything stopped. I didn't speak. I walked straight to the kitchen island, laid the folder down, opened it. Then finally, I spoke. "You believed I stole from Mom." I said quietly, "Let me show you what really happened." The air in the kitchen shifted, like something ancient had just cracked. I pulled out the first photo, a still from the security footage. Sophie, in sunglasses, leaning over the teller's counter. The 10th of October. I said, $20,000. Not online. Not me. No one moved. I laid down the second photo, Jake smiling in his navy sweater. The 15th of October. 15,000. Mom's hands trembled. I unfolded the teller slips. Same branch. Same teller. Same signatures. I slid one across the counter. Compare that to the note Sophie left on the fridge last week. Sophie's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. Her mouth opened, then closed. I pulled up a printout of the account metadata. First login after I left town came from a tablet on this house's Wi-Fi. Recovery email went to a Gmail. I didn't register. Recovery number Jake's. I laid it all out. Page by page. And with each one, their silence deepened. Mom finally stepped forward, picked up the page with trembling fingers. But the bank told us it was done online, she said. Voice small. That's what they thought. I replied. But the withdrawals were in person. The online part that came later from a setup designed to make it look like me. Dad had stopped stirring whatever was in the pot. He stood there frozen, one hand still holding the spoon. Jake looked down at the floor. Sophie finally whispered, "You went through our stuff." I tilted my head slightly. You went through Mom's. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. But the floor beneath them had shifted. Because now, I wasn't defending myself. I was proving what they had done. The silence lasted too long. Long enough for the clock above the sink to tick 4 times. Then Sophie spoke. You always get everything. Her voice wasn't angry. It was exhausted. Bitter. The job? The praise? The respect? Mom talks about you like you're some superhero. I just wanted to even the field. I looked at her. Really looked. She didn't look like the girl from the video anymore. She looked small. Shaky. You didn't even the field. I said. You set fire to it. Jake cleared his throat. She'll be fine. Mom, he muttered. Clara makes more than all of us combined. This wasn't personal. I turned to him slowly. It's always personal when it's family. Mom sat down at the table, folder still open in front of her. Her hands rested in her lap, palms up, like she didn't know what to do with them. You'd let me think my daughter stole from me, she whispered. She wasn't looking at anyone in particular, not even me. I stared at her. You told me not to come home. I said, Even Kieter. And you never even asked if I did it. That was what cut deepest. Not the accusation. Not the silence. Not the threat of lawyers. Just the absence of the question. Dad finally met my eyes. Clara, he said. What are you going to do? I exhaled. I'm not pressing charges. Their shoulders dropped. A visible sigh rippled around the kitchen. But I've sent the full file to the family attorney, I continued. You can decide what happens next. I zipped the folder shut with one steady motion. You told me not to come back unless I return the money. I said, I didn't bring money. I brought the truth. And for the first time since I walked in, I let silence do the rest. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. I closed the folder. Left it right there on the kitchen island, the same place we used to roll out cookie dough every December. I didn't take the pie. I didn't take the folder. Just my coat. And whatever piece of me still believed they would have stood up for me. I turned to go. Clara. It was Mom's voice. Cracked. Raw. I paused at the doorway. But I didn't turn around. Thanksgiving's over, I said. You all made sure of that. Then I stepped out into the fading light. The porch creaked beneath my feet. The wind picked up. No one followed me out. The kitchen lights stayed on. Sophie's laughter didn't return. Jake didn't say a word. Dad didn't come to the door. And that more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. I sat in my car for a while, watching the window, waiting, hoping maybe one of them would come outside. Maybe Mom, but no one came. The house stayed warm, lit, and not mine anymore. Back in Boston, everything felt sharper, colder. I returned to work as if nothing had happened. But I wasn't the same. I stopped calling on Sunday nights. Didn't reply in the family group chat. I let the voicemail icon blink on my screen for 3 full days before I finally listened to it. It was from Mom. Clara, she said. Her voice cracked halfway through the name. We were wrong. I know that now. I didn't want to believe it. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive us. I just wanted you to know. Then silence. She hung up before the minute mark. 2 weeks passed. Then a letter came. Real paper. Real envelope. Inside was a photo. Me. Sophie. And Jake, ages 6. Bah. And 10 sitting on the back porch in Halloween costumes. I was the scarecrow. Sophie had tinfoil wings. Jake was covered in red paint, some kind of superhero. Maybe. On the back of the photo was a single handwritten line. We didn't know how much we'd miss you until you were gone. No signature. Just that. I didn't cry. But I stared at that photo for a long time. Not for what it showed, but for what it couldn't bring back. I didn't go back. Not for Christmas. Not for birthdays. Not even when Sophie and Jake moved out of the house. According to a cousin who still lived nearby, Mom stopped speaking to them, said she needed space. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't offer to come back. Instead, I made something new. I started a weekend seminar at the Community College Financial Protection for Older Adults. It wasn't glamorous. The classrooms had flickering lights and coffee-stained desks. But the people who showed up, they mattered. Women in their 70s with handwritten bank ledgers, veterans trying to understand online banking for the first time, widows bringing old envelopes stuffed with statements they never knew how to read. I didn't tell them my story, but I taught them how to spot red flags, how to protect themselves, how to never need to wonder if the people they love might one day betray them. One Saturday, after class, a woman stayed behind. She must have been in her early 80s, wore a quilted vest and orthopedic shoes. She looked at me with watery eyes and said, "I wish I had a daughter like you." I smiled. Didn't say what I was thinking. Just this, so did mine. I didn't put up a Christmas tree that year. No ornaments. No lights. No phone calls. Just snow against the window and the soft hum of a space heater. There's a kind of grief no one prepares you for. The kind that comes not from death, but from the realization that the people you love chose someone else's version of you over your own. And once they made that choice, you can't undo it. I never opened the folder again. It sits in a drawer beneath old tax returns and a copy of my mortgage. Not on my desk. Not in my office. Just close enough that I know where it is. I don't need to open it. Because the facts haven't changed, and neither have I. The house I grew up in is still standing. But I don't drive by. Not out of anger. Not even out of pain. But because some places aren't homes anymore. They're just where the story ended. I used to think families were built on love. Now I think they're built on choice. And when they chose to believe a version of me I didn't recognize, I had to choose myself. Not because it was easy, but because it was the only honest thing left to do. Not every wound leaves a scar you can see. Some live in silence, in the space between a memory and the truth. And sometimes, surviving isn't about fighting back. It's about choosing who you'll never let rewrite your story again. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment. Tell us, have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do or had to walk away from people you loved because they chose not to know you? We're listening. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need it today. Thank you for watching. You were never alone.